The world is literally ending outside, but somehow the spring 2020 anime season found a way to end first. So let's talk about it. The first show I'd like to talk about is Kami no Taoru, or Tower of God. I'll let you know right now that I did not read the Korean manhwa, I did not read the webtoon, and I kind of went in fresh. I knew that it was a really good series going in because it was super hyped, like it was kind of overhyped in my opinion, and I don't think it was that good towards the end. But let me explain. So the first part of the show is kind of slow, I can suffer through a little bit of a slow beginning, and then it really picks up, and we get introduced to kind of like our main cast, which is Bam, Rak, and Kun, I believe. Those three had some great chemistry. I thought those three gelled together really well. It reminded me of some Hunter x Hunter days when you had Killua, Leorio, and our main character Gon, and they would go and take on these trials, and we get the two characters working off each other, and obviously our main character Bam is kind of like Gon because he's very naive, he doesn't know much about the world, and through Bam, we learn so much about the world and the world building. The lore is so interesting, everything about it was so good, but then they go from all that really, really good stuff, and then they just change into a high school setting, which really threw me off, and I kind of thought the high school setting stuff was extremely boring and not earned, because at that point, when they switch from the trial stuff to the kind of schooling stuff, the plot really goes a lot slower, and then they start talking about world events and like geopolitical movements where you have like the Zahad kingdom and there's some kind of weird conspiracy going on. But at this point, as someone who has not read the manhwa, I have literally no idea what's going on. I have no idea who the king of Zahad is. I have no idea what a princess of Zahad is. And they do explain it. Yes, they do explain it. You are correct. Before you tell me I'm wrong, yes, they explain it. But they explain it like so far down the line that at that point I stopped caring. I was just like, every time they had like that one scene with that guy who drinks the instant coffee and he's talking about some political intrigue, like I'm just lost. Like I don't know what's going on. And those scenes were just so unbearably boring. I personally feel like the order in which they did things for the anime is completely off. I don't know if the manhwa does it any better, but the way they did it, where they kind of give us the political intrigue with the Zahad kingdom, and then they explain what all this jargon means. They should have explained what all the jargon means, and then hit us with the political intrigue. That way I'd be invested, but instead I just got these like coffee scenes, and I'm like, yes, they are talking like between the lines, and they're talking in metaphors, but I can't read between the lines because I don't know what's going on. For example, I was under the impression that he was climbing the tower the whole time, when in fact he wasn't. He was taking an exam so that he could climb the tower, because at the very beginning, in episode 1, when he has to break that giant black sphere, we're told that by breaking that sphere, he has earned the right to climb the tower. But he breaks the sphere, and then he has to earn the right to climb the tower again. So he took a test to take a test so that he can actually go then climb the tower. Another thing that confuses me is one of the characters, Serena. She's the one that gives one of the other characters a knife before she leaves, but her leaving is really the thing that confuses me the most, because aren't they chosen by like this god deification character to like take on the tower, and she just packs up her things and just leaves? You can do that? You can just leave? Like, weren't they doing like a survival of the fittest exam where like 200 people had to die out of 400 people in order to get the numbers down? If you could just leave, then you could just say, hey, I'm in the test, but actually I don't want to take the test. Can you even do that? Like, how do you get away with that? And where's she gonna go? There's nowhere to go. They're in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I have no idea how any of this makes any sense. I'm so confused. Very confusing stuff, and I wish they would have explained all of this ahead of time. I think the absolute peak of Tower of God, like the first season of the anime, is when they were doing the King's Game, like the part where they have to sit on the throne and then put the crown on their head. That part I thought was amazing. I thought that part was really interesting to watch. It built up the characters, it built up other characters as well. We got to see like different abilities, we got to see different types of people, and it did some world building without having to like shove it in your face with some exposition. That was the best part. And then from there we got into some weird school stuff that I just didn't care about. I'm kind of interested in checking out the source material, like checking out the webtoon or the manhwa, just to see what they changed and to see if they rushed things, because there's something definitely wrong about this adaptation. I'm not just talking about the fact that our main character is called Bam, at least that's what the wiki says, but the show, the characters just keep calling him Yoru, and Yoru means night in Japanese, so obviously Bam must mean night in Korean, and I hate it. I hate it whenever they like bring a Japanese game over to the West and they localize it to English and they change the character's name names. Like you have like this Japanese guy and his name is Mark, or his name is like Steve or something. I hate it when they do that, and I'm pretty sure I hate it here. So when they go from Korean to Japanese or Japanese to English, please keep the names the way they are so that we can avoid any kind of confusion in the fan base. Also, it's just a name in the sense that I don't know why you'd have to localize it. Like when you localize something, it makes sense. You have to do some form of localization. You have to make it palatable to that audience. But when it comes to like a first name or a name of a character, I think that's going a little bit too far, because the audience is watching a show, a fantastical show in a fantasy world where you have fantasy characters shooting blasts out of their hands using god water, like literal god water as like a type of thing in that universe. But instead, we can't handle that. The audience can't handle that. Yes, they can handle lizard people, but they can't handle a Korean name. So we had to change it to Japanese. I hate it when they do it Japanese to English, and I hate it here as well. No double standards. And don't even get me started on Ryuru or Rachel, because Rachel, her betrayal was supposed to be like a knife in the back, okay? That was like a twist of the knife. But I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like, oh yeah, that totally hurt, man. Like I didn't feel the betrayal. Like the betrayal wasn't saucy enough because the show didn't put in the time to build up Bam and Rachel. I wish they showed us more scenes where Bam and Rachel were together. I wish they showed us that they had chemistry together instead of showing us these scenes where Rachel's kind of like his mom. Like I don't see them being together at all. Like I don't really see the chemistry together between Rachel and Bam, which is why when the betrayal happened, I didn't go like, yo, I didn't go like my mind was blown. That betrayal was supposed to be a twist of the knife, but I didn't feel it because I just didn't see a connection between these characters. In fact, I hated Rachel from day one because Rachel is like the worst person I have ever seen. And even when they tried to redeem her by telling us like, oh, she wants to be a star, she wants to see the stars, she's willing to do anything for it, and she's like jealous of our main character Bam, and they try and like build her up. I'm like, it's too late. I know you're trying to do this as like a big reveal, you're trying to set up the Rachel backstory as a big reveal, but it's not earned. I think that's the biggest problem with Tower of God or Kami no Taoru, the anime adaptation. I can see glimpses of brilliance. I can see why someone would love this series, but there's just not enough for me there. I feel like the anime is rushed. I have not read the manhwa. If people say it's as good as it is, and if it is as good as it is, I'm guessing that the manhwa must do so much more world building, so much more character development, and much better dialogue. I have no idea how you would have not been able to see the Ryuru betrayal like 400 miles away because it was so obvious. I remember, I think it was like episode 4 or something, there's this one piece of dialogue where Rachel's like, never betray anyone, and above all else, never betray them, especially if they're a girl, Bam. And then Bam's like, well, why can't I betray a girl in this case, Rachel? Because, you know, there's no way you'd betray me, right? And then Rachel says something along the lines of, because if you betray a girl, that's like making an enemy of the entire world, Bam. I'm sorry, guys. It just couldn't get any more obvious. Future Roion here. The more I think about it, the more I hate Tower of God, or at least I hate this adaptation, because if you think about it, Bam's motivation is really, really pure, and he wants to go out there and help his waifu and all that good stuff. But the more I think about it, the more I hate it, because it turns from like this good story into like this really tragic and sad story about a woman who's just so consumed with ambition that she's willing to kind of cast someone aside like yesterday's garbage just to achieve her dream. And that's just the first part, right? It starts that way. It's one thing to kind of let someone die and kind of leave someone to die on the side of the road. It's a completely other thing to drive the knife into someone and then twist it, because that's what she does. She goes from kind of like this I left you to die type thing and I let you kind of do your own thing over there to I'm going to drive the knife into your back and then twist it and then make sure you're dead. Once I realized how terrible of a person Ryuru was, the whole show takes on like a different meaning, where Bam is essentially like this really nice guy. I don't know, I don't really have any other way to put it. He's essentially this nice guy who gets used up and tossed away like yesterday's garbage, and it makes me mad. There is no way, there is absolutely no way the manhwa is like this. There is no way the webtoon is like this. There must be like a terrible adaptation, because people keep telling me, Roion, Tower of God is good, Tower of God is good, and I believe you guys. Tower of God must be good if it got like an anime adaptation from a Japanese studio for a Korean property, but there is no way that Ryuru's motivations, Rachel's motivations are like this in the manhwa. There is absolutely no way. You know, I hate ending things on a sour note, so let's talk about a few of the things I actually did like very much. I thought Kun, like the execution of Kun's character and his backstory is really well done. He only had like maybe one or two flashbacks. I think just the one major flashback. He had like one major flashback that really cements his character as who he is, what are his purposes, why he is the way he is. We get everything about Kun in a nice short package that's not too overdrawn, not too short, and is just right. I thought the way they handled his character was fantastic. Everything from the way he acts to the way he thinks, we know why, and we know his backstory. That was perfect. Another thing I really liked was Anak. I really like Anak's backstory. That scene where she's running away from her mom and she goes back and forth. That scene was very powerful, and above all else, her design is just so unique. I love her design. Her design is something you wouldn't see in an anime. Like, we wouldn't see that kind of like weird tail, green skin thing. And her weapon was so unique too. Like, Anak and Kun, they were like the best part of the show. Rak is pretty good too, but Rak is mostly just there for comic relief. He hasn't really had much of his backstory explained. He's just, you know, a very boisterous type person, and that's fine. Like, those parts are good. I just wish they spent as much time on like the world building, on Rachel especially, on like creating some scenes that really build up Rachel and our main character instead of literally spelling out "I'm going to betray you" in these flashbacks. Anyways, don't get me wrong, I like Tower of God. I'll watch season 2. Let's kind of shift gears here because I want to talk about Honzuki no gekokujou, or Ascendance of the Bookworm, which follows mine. She's an isekai. To recap season 1 real quick, essentially it's an isekai, but before you run out the door, it's not one of those battle isekais where they're like super skilled and they like know about fire magic and, you know, ice magic, that kind of thing. This is an isekai that's for the intellectual. It's an isekai where they use their brains, in the sense that it is the crop rotation meme isekai, where someone that's kind of smart from our world goes to another world and then tells them about soup and teaches them about pancakes and then maybe teaches them about the crop rotation. Like, mine hasn't taught people about the crop rotation. Yes, she has not done that yet, but she has taught people how to make soup, which is a little bit funny. So her mom's like, hey, I throw out the water every time I boil the vegetables, and mine's like, yo, wait, you could keep the water and then drink the water and it would be like a soup. And their minds are just absolutely blown. I love that. I love that kind of like smug lolly just dabbing on everyone because she's so smart. This is like one of the best shows from like a past season. But this season, we lose some of that. Instead, we get some world building, some lore stuff, and the world building and the lore stuff is good. The world of Honzuki no Genkokujou is worth exploring because they talk about how like the aristocrats stay in power, how mana is used to control the masses, how the church is pretty much uber corrupt, just as you'd suspect. And then mine will become the glorious leader of the new revolution, which is fine and all, but I can't help but feel like there were so many missed opportunities, or maybe they're just setting stuff up. Like, a minor example would be when they invent pizza, or rather when mine teaches these savages about the power of pizza, and they love it. They're like, this stuff is so good. But then this kind of doesn't go anywhere. Like, Frida never shows up. Like, a lot of the characters that we get to know in season 1 barely show up within season 2, and season 2 is really just focusing on how she integrates herself into like the church society, which is fine and all, but let's be real here, guys. We started watching Honzuki no Genkokujou for smug lolly inventions, and yes, we do get a few smug lolly inventions, but we kind of lose the hard work that she needs to put in. Like, when she first started out, those hurdles were super hard, but now that she's like kind of established herself, everything is pretty easy. Like, you just visit the carpenter if you need something, oh, you just buy it off like the shelf, you visit another merchant if you need it. They don't really have to gather their own materials. So in that sense, I think Dr. Stone kind of does this whole invention stuff better because he needs to go out and kind of start from scratch almost every time. So there's no real hurdle when she like invents stuff anymore, which kind of sucks, but at least we got some like lore to make up for it. But the thing that I really want to hone in on is now that she's like creating these inventions, like pizza, for example. I guess pizza is not a big deal, but I liked it back when Frida talked about like how revolutionary or how it would affect society as a whole. Like, those were some of the better parts. But one of the biggest inventions that she makes or she brings to this isekai is wood block printing, which is going to advance technology by a literal solid 300 years and could completely revolutionize society as we know it. I believe Lord Ferdinand, like the head priest, he does comment on this and he's like, yo, this is going to change the world. But then we don't hear about the invention like ever again. I'm guessing it's going to make more of an impact on season 3 if we ever get a season 3. But it feels weird that she kind of makes these plot points and you think they're going to be huge, but then they end up getting nowhere after a very small payoff. All in all, like, this season of Honzuki no Genkokujo felt like it was set up. Felt like they set up so many things. They set up so many plot points. They set up mine maybe being adopted. They set up Lord Ferdinand or the head priest looking into her mind. Like, this is one of those few isekais where the main character has told people that she's from another world, and in addition to that, someone has looked into their mind and has seen their memories from another world. Like, what does Lord Ferdinand think of this? Like, what does the head priest? Does she think mine's insane? Does she think she's the devil? Like, maybe mine is some evil, corrupt demon. Like, how does he know in this universe that she's benevolent? He doesn't know. I guess what you could really boil all this down to is, please give us a season 3. Like, come on, you're setting things up. Like, this feels like setup, and we're gonna go somewhere with this, but I kind of doubt we're gonna get season 3. Like, this is probably the best way they could have ended it off, in the sense that it got me curious enough to go read the light novel, or to actually maybe go out and buy it. If that was their goal. If their goal was to get people to buy it, then they did a pretty good job. You know, now that I think about it, some closing thoughts here. I wish mine never joined the church. Okay, hear me out here. Ever since mine joined the church, the scope of the show has narrowed so much. We barely see our old cast. We barely see Rena. We barely see Lutz. We barely see Benno. We haven't even... I think Mark only has one scene. My boy Mark, like, what happened to you, bro? I want to know what's going on with my boy Mark. The whole church stuff, and when I say the whole church stuff, I mean her relationship with Lord Ferdinand has become like the main driving force of the entire plot, which I don't like as much as the old cast. I think the old cast, where she had so much more freedom and she could do whatever she wanted and she could focus on her experiments, on her inventions, was when the show was at its peak. I'm not saying the season is bad. The season is still not bad. I like the world building, but I wish there was more. Next, let's talk about Hamefura, or My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom. The Japanese full name is just way too long. I won't even bother trying to pronounce it correctly, but essentially this show is about another isekai and about another girl, but what it does here is she's in a video game, like in a video game she's played, so she has forehand knowledge of what's going to happen, and she gets reincarnated as the villainess. So she's essentially trying to prevent her own bad end, or rather the main character's good end. And I'll say right now that the start of it is really, really good, because it goes against every cliche, and I feel like, you know those animes where you're just like, god damn it, like, why can't you just act logically? If you just acted logically, none of this would have happened. This is that anime, where our main character does essentially everything in her power to prevent the bad end, and it all makes sense. It all goes down very, very well. But here's the issue. When you go really fast, then you're going to have not much substance towards the end, because the main hurdles, the main plot points have already been, like, solved. I'd say like maybe the first 5 episodes, or like the first few episodes when she's a lolly, are like the best episodes, because they kind of push the plot forward at like a really, really decent pace. We get to see her like take down all these hurdles. Like, hurdle shows up, she knocks it down. Hurdle shows up, she knocks it down. But then when they go through all that, and then she really starts her life as like someone in the school, in the magic school, the plot slows down quite a bit. If it was always fast, I think it would be better. Or if it was always slow, either go always slow or always fast. But when you do these like shift in terms of pacing, it's a little bit hard for the audience to kind of like adjust slowly. Like, I expected some more things to happen every episode, and from there, after she becomes someone that's kind of just in the school doing her own thing, doing slice of life, the show kind of goes from going forward to flatlining. So it's like steadily increasing upwards, right? Just imagine this linear line going up, and then it just flatlines for like the entirety of the rest of the season, which makes it kind of boring, to the point where I yawn even thinking about it. And I will say that this show is really enjoyable, don't get me wrong, but it's a little too heavy-handed with the redemption stuff. Like, she does redeem, like, other people around her, and they kind of, like, grow, and I kind of like how that place is going. But when you kind of, like, bring in the old life into the new life, that's the stuff that you have to like tread really carefully, because in a lot of isekais you don't want to bring in their past life. Like, that life is over. You don't want to bring that into the new world. That stuff has old baggage. You left that life behind, and that's what makes isekai so appealing, I suppose. That's what makes it so interesting, is because they have that backstory, but you don't need to pull from it. You do not pull from that backstory. You can do it in a flashback, you can do it in like a dream state, but you cannot pull characters from their past into that world. Like Honzuki no Genkokujo and ReZero, to a certain extent, they do that. They see their old world in like brief glimpses, and they're there pretty much just to reinforce the idea that our main character can't go back. But in Hamefura, they bring back her friends from the other world. So essentially, the way the plot handles this is Sophia, one of the characters in the show, she is a reincarnation of one of her past friends. And it's kind of like really touching because they're able to make up in another life. Like they're able to connect with each other, like Angel Beats, where you have like these two characters that are really close, but then they reincarnate and they meet each other, and it's like love. It's great. It's good there. But in here, I think it's so forced in the sense that her friend didn't die a tragic death, right? And they met back in like high school or something, right? Her friend must have lived like a full-on fulfilling life. She must have met new people, but instead she gets reincarnated to meet the person from their high school. It kind of like trivializes her friend's entire life into just being revolved around her. Like this whole story is obviously revolved around Katarina as she is the main character, but it's a little bit ridiculous at this point to bring back a dead friend from another world who has lived a fulfilling life and is now meeting you. Like, what? What about her other friends? She must have made new friends at some point, right? So in this case, I'm definitely going to give the edge to Honzuki no Genkokujou for better world building, better isekai. This one is just Hamefura, don't get me wrong, it's definitely okay. And if you're into that kind of like reverse harem type deal, then you're going to like it even more than I did. I thought it was just funny hijinks up to certain points, but it got a little bit boring towards the end as essentially nothing was happening and the plot was barely moving forward at all. I think this story would have been like really good as like a movie maybe, and then it end with like maybe one of the routes or something where they like condense the first few bits into like the main thing, and then it shows like a future flashback or a flash forward rather of what the future would be like, because as it is right now, it's just a little bit drawn out. But if I do recall correctly, I believe Hamefura is getting a season 2. So I will be watching it. I'll definitely be watching season 2, as I did enjoy season 1. Like, don't get me wrong, I like to nitpick a lot, but I do enjoy these shows, which is exactly why I nitpick them so much. But I'll be very disappointed if they end up recycling another bully plot point. You know, I love bully plot points just as much as the next guy, but if you have to do them like not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, but 6 times, that's, well, when I was keeping count and they did the bully plot point, then I think it's time to like come up with something new. Maybe introduce a new character to spice things up a bit, because as it is right now, it is kind of boring towards the end. But the first part, the beginning, like the first 5 episodes, absolutely fantastic. Okay, moving on to another show. Time for me to become a hypocrite on what I just said. I want to talk about houkago, teibou, nishhi, or Diary of Our Days at Breakwater. This is a cute girls doing cute things anime, which is kind of boring and nothing really much happens, but I really enjoyed it because it's cute girls doing cute things. And I'm only mentioning this because I was talking about Hamefura, right? And when I said Hamefura was boring because it was just kind of like these cute boys doing these cute things with our main girl, this is kind of like the same thing except for it's just cute girls doing cute things, and I like this, but I don't like that. So I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm just not like the target demographic of Hamefura. And on another note, I can't really talk about this show like really at all because it got cancelled. Well, it didn't get cancelled. It's still going to air, I believe, but it was planned to have 12 episodes, but they stopped at 3 episodes because of the whole pandemic, and we have to wait for the whole pandemic to end before we get the rest of the episodes. All in all, like, this season has been hit pretty hard by the pandemic. There really isn't that many shows to watch. But before I give my final thoughts about this season, I want to talk about one last show. I want to talk about Kakushigoto, or hidden things. Like, it translates to like hidden things, but Kaku means draw and Shigoto means job. So you like put it together, it's like hidden things, and his job is like to be a mangaka and he's hiding it. So it's like a wordplay. It's some play on words. It's an absolutely epic title, which is precisely why I picked it up in the first place. I don't really want to spoil anything about the show. The art style is really unique. It's really interesting. But essentially the show is like theatrical irony just ramped up to the max, because the way it works is it shows you there's going to be a tragedy coming. You know there's a tragedy coming, and yet it just does slice of life stuff. It's just slice of life, but in the back of your mind you're like, is next episode when the big tragedy is going to happen? No. It's going to be the next episode or the next episode. So when you watch it like week by week, you're just waiting. You're just sitting in this purgatory-like state where you're just not sure if the tragedy is going to hit now or if it's going to hit next episode. Is it going to hit now or within the next 5 minutes? But it has some really, really nice slice of life moments. If your life's getting you down, Kakushigoto, highly recommended. Future Roion here. There's a show that I completely forgot to mention. It's Gal and Dino, or Gal and Dinosaur, or Gyaru to Kyoryuu. And essentially it's about this gal and a dinosaur caricature type thing, and it's really cutesy. I just thought I'd mention it because I don't think that many people have watched it. I thought it was pretty good. There is one thing I did not like about the show though, is that it does like these weird live action scenes. I know some people really liked the action scenes. Some people really like the live action spruced up with the anime type stuff. But I didn't like it very much. I would have preferred if they did like the live action and then maybe draw in the dinosaur instead of doing like this improv styled dinosaur plushie type thing. I preferred much more the 2D animation than the 3D stuff. But it was really cute, really good, and if you want to forget about pain in real life, I highly recommend you check out this show. Well, that's all the shows I've been watching this spring 2020. You know, some closing thoughts here. I thought this season was really weak. It was much weaker than like the last season. I know a lot of people said last season sucked and there wasn't much to watch, but I think this season's even worse, as in there was even less to watch, and the pandemic did not help at all. Some shows like managed to scrape by just fine because they have to like create like a backlog of episodes before they release them, right? So they managed to survive the pandemic. But that gets me wondering, right? If these shows survived this season, does that mean next season's gonna hit really, really hard? Well, at any rate, if I missed out on like a really good show this season, let me know in the comments and I'll probably check it out. I mean, it's not like I have really anything else to do. So yeah, I'll see you guys on the next video.